Welcome to Meowify. Today we are venturing down into one of my favorite subreddits, r/MaliciousCompliance. This first story is from a country outside of the United States, just for clarification purposes. So this one dates back from years ago, when you would fill your income statement manually, like with a pen on a form. In those days, in my country, we didn't have a withholding tax system, but you would pay in year, say, 2007 on your income of year 2006. Of course, the form would come by mail pre-filled with name and details, and some quite accurate amounts, because the state knows already pretty well how much you make. My family name is a bit complex, being multi-part and with unusual letter clusters in the middle. Mistakes are understandable, but you would expect the Revenue Service to be exact on that matter. Unfortunately, they weren't. They kept misspelling it every year on the form and on all subsequent forms, tax statement, tax returns, etc. They would mail me, despite my correcting it manually every year on my income statement, in black, then in red, then the following year with neon red Sharpies. Then, 1 year later, adding a sticky note, then adding a whole letter, then adding a letter and copies of my ID as proof, etc. But they weren't budging. It was quite irritating, because the tax statement has to be shown on several occasions when you interact with the state administration or justice. Everybody would notice the discrepancy. Everyone was understanding that it was obviously a mistake from the Revenue Service, but it was still annoying on so many levels, the most basic of which being a matter of respect for my identity. After 10 or 12 years of them not taking notice of my notes and corrections upon receiving a payment notice still misspelled, I went in person to my local Revenue Service office and asked to speak with someone about that issue. I made it very clear to the clerk that they were wrong. He was adamant that they were correct, like I wouldn't know my own name, and added for good measure that he couldn't change my name in their systems because he didn't have access to that blah blah. I was having none of it, so cue malicious compliance. Me. So, you said you were positively, absolutely right about my name's spelling? Clerk. Silence. I shall therefore stop paying my taxes. I am not the person on your forms, and there is no way you can come to me asking for that tax money, since the person on your forms doesn't live at that address, and in fact does not exist. Clerk, mouth gaping, eyes so wide they're gonna pop out. But in case you need that tax money, you know how to write my actual name. And I left with a smirk. I actually did not pay that tax installment. In those days, you paid your taxes in 3 installments over the year. 2 weeks later, I got a reminder letter without the 10% penalty normally owed for late payment, and with my name correctly spelled. Shouldn't have wasted so many Sharpies over the years. That was great. Definitely something to keep in mind with government agencies is if they don't have to touch something, they're not going to, because they don't think they have to. And then if it's their fault, they're just going to blame you for it, unfortunately. Especially in the United States, it seems like. Yeah, well, at least this person's country tells them what they're going to owe for taxes and only has them pay that amount rather than saying, oh, it's your job to pay what you think you're going to owe, and then it might be correct, or you might owe us more, or we might owe you back. Whatever. Alright, this next one is titled, You Want Pedantry? You'll get pedantry. The background. I work at a club, think country club for the lower middle class, that holds raffles and such games as incentives for people to choose us. Because of this, as well as a liquor license, we also hold a gambling license. Chuck is an elderly member of the club and has been coming here for years. He has a little clout and is a recognized face. Starting a couple of weeks ago, Chuck began being very annoyed that with a certain raffle-type game that we run, our random number generator will occasionally produce the same number twice in a row. After all, it's random. He asked us to check the rules and see if that was okay. Side note, the branch of the government that monitors gambling and gambling licenses in New Zealand, is called the Department of Internal Affairs, or DIA. I personally went to the DIA website and trawled through all the rules relevant to this type of gambling, and I found nothing. I told Chuck as much and thought it would be the end of it. Of course not. To make a long story short, Chuck went to the DIA himself and found someone who agreed with him. We got an email telling us to stop, citing a rule that wasn't on the website. The rule doesn't explicitly state that we can't have the same number twice in a row. It is his interpretation of these rules that he is forcing us to comply with. Okay, fine. We won't argue. This is the guy who renews our gambling license. Chuck wins. Of course he doesn't. See, Chuck's favorite drink is a quadruple whiskey on the rocks. In New Zealand, the largest drink you can serve is a double. Quadruples just aren't allowed. He gets around this by ordering a double whiskey on the rocks and a double whiskey shot. He then pours a shot into the other glass and happily takes his quadruple away. Technically legal, but by a certain interpretation of the law, not okay. Chuck will never have his favorite drink again, and he doesn't get to complain, because he's been very clear that loopholes aren't okay. What a jerk. OP left an edit. I've been informed that I didn't include enough Fallout. I wasn't the first to deny him the quadruple, but I saw it happen. He responded very quietly. Face just kind of fell out of his, "I'm gonna get a quadruple whiskey" smile. I think I saw him think, "Ah, crap." He then amended his order to a double, paid sadly, and walked off. Yeah, that's certainly one thing that people don't necessarily remember can happen. Where if you force them to do something a certain way from a certain point of view, you're probably going to get that turned around on you. This next one is about a couple of people in a high school who pulled one over on their teachers and learned more in the process. This story occurs about 6 years ago in my high school chemistry class. I don't know what made me think of it, or why I had never thought of it before, but here you go. Too long didn't read at the bottom. My high school was a project-based high school, meaning that most of my classes were centered around group projects. Oof. This meant working with students that we normally didn't want to work with to do projects we didn't want to do. Most classes had a rewritten general contract that protected students if they were the only ones to do work, as well as giving general roles to each member of the group. But still, most project contracts were generally ignored. In the first week of my sophomore year, I'm taking a chemistry class with my best friend, and we are given the opportunity to choose a partner to do a very quick project. My best friend and I quickly agreed to knock this project out together. I believe the project was as simple as finding an at-home science experiment and recreating it while describing the very basic chemistry principles. Think using heat to change states, or baking as an example to describe how combining different elements can create a new compound. The chemistry teacher didn't have a preset contract like the other professors, and instructed us that the rest of the day we would be writing up our contracts and sending them to her by the end of the period. Now, one thing to know about my best friend and I was that we constantly were doing random fun projects outside of school without a problem, and both agreed that the project contracts were generally dumb. So when the teacher told us to create our contract, we didn't take it seriously. We had 3 stipulations in our contract and our signatures at the bottom, with a very brief sentence stating that a failure to follow the stipulations would result in removal of the group. Our 3 stipulations were as follows. 1. Don't be annoying. 2. Don't get annoyed. 3. Get the work done. Signed, me and best friend. We sent the contract to the teacher roughly 10 minutes after she gave us all instructions, and we began to mess about the rest of the class period away. Teacher then proceeds to print our contract with a handful of other groups, and walked down the hall to get to the contracts. I don't know if she didn't look at it before she printed, but when she gets back to the classroom, she has a look of pure disgust. OP and best friend, are you serious? This isn't a real contract. You need to take this seriously. Send me a new group contract by the beginning of class tomorrow. And that's what we did. If she wanted a real contract, she was getting a real contract. I went to my best friend's house after school that day, and we proceeded to write up a 20-page contract with all the bells and whistles. I'm talking preamble, definitions, group member rights, obligations, provisions, action steps, steps of removal, signatures, as well as random articles, sections, and clauses. The whole 9 yards. If there was a remote chance of it happening, we included it. We emailed her the new contract that night and awaited the next class. The next day, we walked into her class, ready for whatever reaction came our way. We sit down, and after explaining to all the other groups what we were doing that day, she walks over to our desks, plops the contract on the table, and says, "You guys are ridiculous. Sign it." That contract was used for every group project the rest of high school, whether we were given a rewritten one or not. After all, we needed to take it seriously, didn't we? Oh gosh, yeah, like I said, they definitely ended up learning more about contracts than they anticipated in making that 20-page monstrosity. Looks like someone in the comments stated that they had to do something similar in high school, but they actually used a notary seal on theirs. The seal was old and out of date apparently, but that's still great. Oh, high schoolers, teenagers in general, can have some of the most hilarious malicious compliance. This next one also occurs outside of the United States, and let's see how it goes. I work as a bike courier, delivering all sorts of various package of your online orders. I've been on this job for around 6 years on and off, and have always made an effort to be kind and patient with all of my customers. However, given the nature of the job, we do our best at keeping the pace high. The rules for delivery are as follows. Try the address. If no response, try a neighbor, if a neighbor is available. Try between 2 to 5 neighbors if possible. Leave it with them. If not, we return the package to the depot and try another 2 times on the next day. If still not possible to deliver, we hold the package 2 weeks until finally shipping it back to the original sender. There is some discretion left to each courier on what to do with the package. Our branch rarely has packages that are not delivered over 3 days, and pretty much never have them sent back to sender. However, it does happen. On this particular day, I was doing the evening shift, delivering various packages to people's homes. It is one of the better delivery times since it is past 6 p.m. and most people are home from work by then and able to receive their orders with no hassle. About halfway into the shift, I arrive at this lovely suburban home. I have a relatively big box to deliver to them. To my delight, as I walk up to the door, I see their whole family having dinner through the window. Now, I'm no fan of disturbing family time, but they ordered something, and it's my job to deliver it. So I give them a little wave as I approach their door, and decide not to ring the bell as they saw me flailing their package around. The package is also very clearly branded from a specific brand, so they should know it's something they ordered. They all look at me for a hot minute and continue eating their food. Odd, but maybe they just didn't see me? I ring the bell and look through their window again. They all look at me, I point to their package, and lift an eyebrow. They all look back at me, look at their food, and continue eating. Right. Now, I'll ring once more, but this is getting frustrating. I ring one more time, glance through their window, and basically shove the package as close to the window as possible as if it's a portal to their backsides. And here's where malicious compliance starts. They look at me and are now visibly annoyed by my presence, and they shoo me away. Now this makes me mad. I treat people with respect, and it's been a good 10 minutes I've been at their door, wasting everyone's time. So I walk back to my bike, shove the package in my backpack, and look at my tracker app. I have to report the status of the package. Delivered, neighbors, back to depot, not possible to deliver. I decide to look at what our interaction was, which was refusing to accept a package. They saw me, saw their package, and indicated to me they didn't want it, so I marked it as such, meaning it's now delivered back to sender. Back at the office, I mentioned this ordeal to find out the particular address has been acting like this ever since, and my super basically said it was all good by me. A week later, I found out they also blacklisted the address and refused to deliver any packages there anymore. They now have to either order through a different service, or pay for a different shipping company, or pick up at our depot instead. Oof. As I said, this one is outside the US, and it looks like the OP is required to have a signature from the vast majority of packages, and they don't really leave packages on the porch like they do in the US. Hey, that would definitely cut down on the number of porch pirates, wouldn't it? Alright, this last one is from a contractor who was contracted out to a site and met the general contractor. Not my story, but my grandfather worked in the sheet metal trade, so secondhand account. He was in charge of several qualified men for this mall build. His contract was bidded for the HVAC install. Nothing else, as far as Gramps was concerned. He can be extremely stubborn when it comes to that. The story takes place during the winter where it snowed a lot, with all the supplies unloaded at the job site. Work was about ready to begin. This is where contractor comes into the picture. This high and mighty man thought he had say over the whole yard. Contractor: there's enough snow shovels for you and your men. Gramps: my team's not a bunch of maintenance men. We're here to do one thing and one thing only. Well, my entire team shovels snow. If you're not gonna be a part of the team, then you can get off the job site. Okay. With that, Gramps calls back to his shop and has them bring out the largest truck they have. With that, him and his team loaded up everything on the site. All the while, contractor is losing his mind. Later, they all had a meeting in which Gramps asked the question to the boss: what was our bid for? Were we to set sheet metal and HVAC, or were we supposed to shovel snow? And was promptly answered with affirmation to the former. They didn't get in trouble, and didn't get voted off the contract, but this act of malicious compliance definitely made it a struggle and fights between contractor and Gramps throughout the remainder of the build. That's definitely something. If you're hiring someone out to do a particular job, and that's their specialty, you don't necessarily tell them to go do something else. Like, you're not going to tell an aerospace engineer to do heart surgery. That just wouldn't make sense. And it's not their specialty. I would imagine if this contractor had nicely asked, then the OP's grandpa might have been more willing to help out, but just kind of expecting them to do it? Yeah, no. Alright, thank you so much for watching this video today. I hope you enjoyed these malicious compliance stories. I know I did very much. If you have any suggestions of what I should respond to or read next, please leave a comment. If you would like to see more videos, please subscribe. And if you could, please leave a like, and if you would, share the video with your friends. I am trying to grow my channel, and every little bit would help. Thank you so much, guys.